This video is brought to you by Barbell Apparel. If you are gluteally advantaged like I am, you might find it difficult to find comfortable clothing, let alone comfortable gear. And these stretchy jeans, these aren't jeggings, guys. You can wear these out to dinner and then go straight into a CrossFit workout without having to switch them out. You can do absolutely anything in them. They're comfortable, they're stylish, they're durable. Oh, and by the way, Barbell Apparel hosts a line of Bromley merch, so go ahead and check them out, support the channel. Now on to the show. Where are you from in Illinois?
I grew up in the northwest suburbs, so you couldn't get more middle class, and the best schools, like they're always rated, and I didn't know this, but I just see, high school now and versus, like, I'm an old man, right? When I was growing up, but the schools were so good and they're just everywhere. Awesome place to grow up. It's, since then, obviously there's a lot more people and the taxes and everything else skyrocketed, but, we had the towns are all butt next to each other. So you could cross the street, you go down, a quarter mile and you're in a different city. You would never know. Everything just butts up. But as far as I'm concerned, I probably could not have asked for a better place to live, better place to grow up. You could ride your bikes everywhere. There's still tons of stuff to do. Education was huge. Sports are obviously huge, because there's just so many kids. So, I had a paper route, the best job I ever had for 3 years. Every morning I'd wake up and deliver papers, and, it was safe enough that you could drive and ride your bike, at 5 o'clock in the morning. I still think that was the most, one of the most influential things in my life was having a, everyday paper route where you had to be up at like 4:45 to wrap the papers and deliver them on my bike. I did that every single morning for 3 years, and helped put a down payment on my first truck when I was like 23. So my dad took most of my money and put it away. so I had
Smart
about
man.
Yeah. So I was very lucky. My parents, I have no hard luck story. I didn't grow up poor. My dad was around. Obviously, my parents are still married. Super, I hate to, just kind of conservative, but they were just like, whatever you want to do, we'll support it. I played in a punk band for 4 years, and I was the drummer. So, where we practiced? You always practiced at the drummer's house. So, yeah. So you can imagine, I was friends with a lot of different kids in different groups and stuff. And, imagine, once or twice a week, you got all these kids come down. I mean, horrible instruments. I mean, we're just, barely making things meet song-wise. So they're very supportive of anything I did, which I was very lucky. Obviously, you had to get good grades and, don't get in trouble or anything like that. But I had a storybook life. I really have. Obviously, not everything works itself out, and there's problems. But I had trying to do what my parents did. I'm trying to do that for my kids, give them the support, give them enough independence. So, yeah.
You start out by saying, I didn't have a hard luck story or anything like that. And isn't it kind of funny that that's the first thing that people go to, because I think people are so used to trying to use that as the qualifier for. Yes, it absolutely is currency. Where in reality, your parents did right by you, and that's the mold by which you're going to do right by your kids. And it sounds great. Like, I spent a couple years in high school in Charleston, Illinois, and we went from Southern California out in the cornfields.
That's Charleston is Eastern
Illinois University is where.
That's where
Charleston.
The high school.
So I think it's.
Yeah, Mattoon is right there.
Yeah, I've been to Mattoon High School. Yeah, we used to. They're like it was 10 miles of cornfields from here to there. I got whiplash moving out there, but I remember that was the only place I ever lived where I could ride my bike to school and back.
Yes,
and it was just such a different experience to be out there. And kids would have jobs. Most of the labor jobs, the small jobs, were kids in high school, and that it's just such a different way of living. But that changes you. That impacts you quite a bit.
So. I got real quick story. So my dad was a track coach. He coached at my high school. So I went to all the state track meets, which were in Charleston. So I went to them since I was like a little kid. I'd always try to help out. Eventually I was able to compete a couple times. So, but we always stayed in a dumpy motel in Mattoon. All right, that was, I mean, so just so everyone knows, there's not a lot in Mattoon. There's no hotels in Mattoon. There's only motels. So fast forward probably, I don't know, 10 years or so, not even that. I'm in a bar on Tuesday in Tucson, Arizona. It's summertime. We train, every day. But Tuesdays they had penny pitchers at this bar. And so we get there early. Everyone would be so hydrated, ready to drink. And we're at, there's tons of people there. And I look over and there's one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. Okay. And I'm like, listen, I got some beers in me. I just went up and talked to her. And I was like, hey, whatever, just general conversation. I asked her where she's from. Mattoon, Illinois. And I was like, what are the chances of the hottest girl right now in Tucson is from Mattoon? There's probably a couple thousand people there at the time. I don't know what the population is, but it's not big. And there's not a lot going on. But I was like, you talk about having an inroads with a girl. Like, I know your town. I used to stay there. So anyway, just a random.
Yeah, that's a hell of an icebreaker because Charleston had like maybe 10,000 people in it. It's super cornfield. Just I've never seen so many corn or so much corn in my goddamn life. But yeah, no, to run into somebody that's certainly it's almost serendipity.
Yeah. I didn't date her though, so. It didn't work out.
I was waiting for the twist to be like, that's your wife that was standing in the room or something. Okay. I wanted to talk, I wanted to start off a bit. Given your upbringing in Northern Illinois and the kind of middle class life you had and the work ethic and all of that, I think a lot of that does come out in your writing and in a lot of the messaging that you put out. But I want to go back to what I think probably this generation doesn't maybe know that well. You had a brief powerlifting career, it looks like, and you amassed 1,000-pound squat, multi-ply or not. Very few people can say they've handled 1,000 pounds on their back in any capacity whatsoever. And that had to be such a huge milestone. I'm really curious about how you kind of got into that, picked up speed, and really kind of what got you out so quickly, because it looks like you didn't linger around for 35 years like so many people did until your body disintegrated.
When I was a kid, I was like, I love training, just so everyone knows that. There was a time in my life that's like before training and after training, and it was 1,000%, 1,000 miles per hour ahead. And there wasn't a lot of information back then. So my dad eventually got me a plyometric style book from Fred Hatfield. And nothing would be even remotely applicable to that age level, but I was like, fuck, I'm learning something. But anyway, on the back cover, it said, Fred Hatfield, so-and-so squatted, whatever he did, 1,030 or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, someday maybe I can squat 1,000. That was etched in my mind when I was probably in 8th grade or, freshman year of high school. Fast forward, after I was done playing football, I always remember this, is my final game we played against Arizona State. It was it was Thanksgiving. And I remember walking out of the stadium and thinking, oh my God, what am I supposed to do now? Because everything in my life from basically 7th grade until I was in grad school at that time. It was like everything was dedicated to football. Any trip I did, anything I did was all based on football. Whether I was training for it or, practicing. So I remember thinking, like, I gotta put this somewhere. And prior to that, I had read an interview with Louis Simmons. It was on the old testosterone.net. Now it's T-Nation, but they used to be called Testosterone. And I remember reading the article and, again, people have to understand that Louis had no footprint at all on the internet, and I was like, oh my God, who is this guy? He's bananas. And I'm sure you could probably read that article. The interview is called "The Mad Monk of Powerlifting." And the most important thing is, he said, if you're fast, I can make you strong. I'll never forget that. Because everything up until then was like sets at 10 for 2 weeks, 8, 6, and I'm like, that doesn't work for me. Like, I knew it didn't work. I never liked to periodize my training because you're going to have good days and bad days. And I learned that very early on. You can't predict that stuff, especially when you're an athlete, because there's just, you're tired, you're running, you're doing this, whatever. And he said in the article, I don't believe in standard periodization either. I'm like, oh my God, who is this man? And plus he made a bunch of other comments that he was Louis, right? So I was super happy. Anyway, I went and found out a whole bunch of stuff about him. And I thought, well, shit, this would be great. I love lifting weights. I didn't want to Olympic lift because I've been to Olympic lifting meets and it's like you're at church, like shh, where powerlifting was like everyone fucking. And I was much better at squatting and didn't like the bench, but I was like, boy, it'd be nice to have a big chest and shoulders because I was very far behind in the bench press. So anyway, long story short, I bought a Powerlifting USA magazine, and this must have been in like 2000 or 2000 something, about 2000. I had no idea there was any gear. Okay, none. I just thought people wore knee wraps and stuff, and you wear a singlet. So I remember it was the top 100. If you remember the old Powerlifting USA's, they had the top 100, and I think it was like the 220 or 242 class. And I was looking at those numbers, and I was like, holy shit. Like, I thought I was kind of strong. Like, I lifted my ass off. I was real conscientious about eating and all this other stuff. And I was like, God, these guys benching like 7, whatever it was. I don't remember what it was. But even like the bottom one, I was like, dude, I'm not even on the bottom. So I did all my research and stuff. And then as I was walking out, I was like, I'm going to powerlift. I got to find it out. So that game, I believe, was on a Thursday or Friday. It's probably on a Friday. There was Thanksgiving Day, and then Friday we had the game. And by Sunday, I was doing my first, I guess, bench workout. So it was pretty cool. I already kind of had a plan, but I knew I needed to do something competitive. I couldn't just lift weights for fun. I needed some kind of direction. So I don't know what year that was. I'm going to guess, let's just say 2000. And then I had moved to Kentucky to work at the University of Kentucky, and I guess it was 2001, right at the, January 2001 or something like that. So, one of the other guys that was coaching there was also young, and he wanted to powerlift too. So we had kind of learned everything together. And he eventually squatted 900 at 19. Super strong dude. You never know it. He's just one of those super fast, could figure out training very easily. Like, knew what he needed to do. It was awesome having him because we'd always bounce ideas off each other. Plus, he's still a great friend of mine. So, but from that point, I always wanted to bench 500 and squat 1,000. And then the shirts got a little crazy. So I'm like, I got to squat, or I got to bench 600. That became the new norm. So, but the reason why I got out was because all I want to do was squat 1,000. To me, that's like because no one cares if it's 1,000 or 1,025. It's still just 1,000. Like, do you know what I'm saying? And I remember the days, that was the greatest powerlifting day of my life because I PR'd everything. And what's even crazier is that day I used a brand new bench shirt, never used. I had torn my pec 6 weeks prior. I couldn't even bench for 6 weeks. All I could do was overhead press and lat pull down. And I trained so effing hard. And this was like the pinnacle of what I would call like my mental lifting game, because I somehow convinced myself that I was the strongest bencher in the world. It was like daily repetitive visualization and understanding that it didn't matter if I couldn't bench. It didn't matter that I never even wore this shirt before. It was brand new. And everything just kind of came to a head, so to speak. Even when I was squatting, all I had to do was worry about getting my body in position. I didn't worry about it. Like, I know I'm strong enough. And I didn't even wear my suit. This is the first time I wore the suit in like 6 months. So it was just like, I felt so confident. I mean, when you start training, you feel good and everything, but that was like the last 2 years I was powerlifting. Everything was so honed. I didn't even worry about the weight on the bar when we were doing dynamic work. I just based everything on how I felt. And so you can put any amounts of bands or chains or anything else on there, as long as the bar speed was moving where I wanted it to, whether that was more or less, it was dialed in. And I think I went back, this was a long time ago, but I went back and figured out every weight that I used for my squat sets, for the majority of them. And I calculated the approximate weight on the box. Does that make sense? So once you have the deload, it was 77%, which is like prime for speed stuff. Just really, it's heavy enough, but light enough. And that was the average weight that I used at the bottom of the box for my squat work. And it was just like, I didn't even know. Like it was, so I was like really tuned in to how my body felt and what I needed to do. You know, I never did anything at that point that I didn't need to do. I don't know if that makes sense, but I didn't like have to satisfy a volume urge or I have to do this exercise. If it didn't work, I wasn't going to do it. If it did work, I bombed the shit out of it. And I was, you know, and that was actually, Dave always laughs about this, but he's like, you're the only person I've ever met who said, screw my weaknesses, I'm going to exploit my strengths. And so that's not exactly true, but what happened was, whenever, you don't know if you remember Mike Ruggiero. Mike Ruggiero is one of the biggest humans, one of the best dudes in the world. I lifted with him, you know, the entire time I was at Westside, but he always said, why do we always train our hamstrings? We need strong quads too. And Chuck one time told me, I'll never forget this. It was on Friday, which is dynamic squat day at Westside. And he's like, he elbows me in the arm and said, you know, Jimmy, we all say you got to push back. He goes, but you got to squat down at some point. And something clicked in my head. I'm like, you need strong legs. I got 4 muscles here and 2 back here. Let's just make these as big and strong as possible. So I really started training the shit out of my quads. And Mike was always like scared to do it because Louis was all about hamstrings. I'm like, fuck it, man, just do it. Who gives a shit? Let's go quad heavy, man. So at that point, I just started. I mean, I obviously did hamstring work and I did a ton of, you know, low back and abs and stuff like that. But I trained for 2 years the hell out of my quads, and it made a huge difference, especially obviously besides the squatting, but taking the bar out. I saw an old video that someone posted of me at Westside. My legs were so massive, I couldn't believe it. You know, I'm glad I don't have any hang-ups about that shit because I would try to, you know, be 270 pounds again and doing leg extensions, but I don't care anymore. But yeah, it was an awesome time. But the most important thing was I had a goal. And whether this is a character flaw or not, once I do something, I'm okay with just leaving it be and leaving. I've always been like that. Like if I broke up with a girl, I'm like, done. Like later, like you're not in my life anymore. I'm not going to hang on to it. Even with football, as much as I love football, like it was over. What am I going to do? So I just, like Sunday I was powerlifting. I was 100% into it. So, like I said, good or bad, I just, you know, people ask me that, like, why did you quit? And I'm like, I didn't quit. I did what I wanted to do. And I'm like, I always wanted to play college football. That was the number one thing in my life, college football. That's all I wanted to do. I got to do that. I got to squat 1,000. So I'm super happy that I had that attitude because I'm not good enough to half-ass stuff. You know, if I'm going to go for a goal, that's all that's important. Not all that's important. You know what I'm saying? It's not like I ignored my family and, you know, didn't study or anything like that. But that was the goal. So, good or bad?
That's almost certainly to your benefit because I think so many people have lack of clarity of goals and they're waiting for something to fall in their lap. And then as they get to it, they're either not satisfied. If they do get it, well, there's always one more thing I want to do or I'm not quite. I always joke that as StrongerMan's growing, because that's kind of where I've been centered for the time I've been lifting, they keep adding divisions, so they're kind of going the powerlifting route. Now they have all these masters classes, and it's like the worst thing for the sport because where guys should be phasing out, going and doing triathlons and living a little bit longer, they're still bloating themselves to keep their, you know, suited, strapped, 600-pound axle deadlift at 70 years old. Yeah. And I'm like, God, you're killing their life expectancy. I want to just point something out really quick because, I mean, I'm not as seasoned as you are, but I started lifting around 99, 2000. So I've seen everything change. I don't think a lot of people lifting right now kind of recognize the landscape from like 20, 25 years ago because I got the exact same whiplash that you talked about with Powerlifting USA, funny enough, because I think around 2000, 2001, the first one I got was right around when like Bill Crawford, I think, hit the first 800. Yeah. And I'm like 800 benches? What's going on? And people today talk about unrealistic standards because there's like jacked guys on their Instagram.
Yeah.
And I'm like, try opening up a Powerlifting USA and seeing multi-ply lifts and ranking yourself against that when you have no fucking idea what any of it means.
Yeah.
And there was no distinction.
No. The craziest thing, though, is, I don't know if you remember George Halbert. He was a big-time bencher at Westside. I am telling you, I saw him do stuff in that weight room that I don't think most people could ever imagine. When I was still living in Kentucky at this time, and he competed in the 198s at the Arnold, and I think the old record might be like 580, okay? 5'9", something like that. He benched 683. So think about that for a second. It was so... And this was back before the internet really started, so it was like someone went and called someone. So you don't know if it's a case of telephone bullshit, because then he called this guy. I remember where I was. I was in the dumbbell rack, and my buddy's like, "You're not going to believe this, but Halbert benched 683 at 198." And I was like, "What? No, 583." Whoops. So that was, like, talk about unrealistic standards. Like, dude, he weighed less than 200 pounds, and he benched 683. It was insane. I'm going to tell you real quick, Bill Crawford and the late Mike Miller, best bench teachers I've ever seen in my life. Ever. Those guys figured everything out, man. Smartest guys I've ever been around, and great coaches. Mike Miller, I don't know if you're familiar with Mike, but he passed away not too long ago. One of the best coaches, and not just what to do, but how to get you to do it. Coaching is communication. It's not just, I know what periodization is, I know what this is. Coaching is getting you to do what I need you to do in such a way that you understand it. That's what coaching is communication. It's not writing an article, it's not yelling at someone. It's me getting you to do something and get it done correctly. And Mike Miller, oh my God, was he good. I watched him coach from beginner-ish, guys who are not benching very much, all the way up to 700-800 pound benchers, and just transforming them in a workout, like in a seminar. Unbelievable. And Bill's the same way. So, yeah, the old Metal Militia guys, man, dude, they were, God, were they good. Oh, they were good.
I remember back when I was buying every magazine I could, because Powerlifting USA wasn't really widespread, so I was reading Muscle and Fitness or whatever the fuck was available at the time. But I remember Mike Miller was actually in a spread, and that was the state of powerlifting back then. If you were a powerlifter, you were featured, you were a multi-ply guy. And the two things I remember, I had to be like 16, but I remember his tattoo, "Do not demand what you can't take by force." Yep. And I remember seeing he benched more than he deadlifted, and it made no sense to me, again, because I didn't understand what was going on there. But he was a crazy bencher, and once I got a handle for this, what the suit was, but that was burned into my head because I just remember the pose, just these big, swollen, bald sons of bitches lifting inhuman amounts of weight, and I want to say that's what influenced me to go that way.
Mike was just a larger than life person with a heart of gold. One of the best people I've ever met in this sport. That's it. So,
on the topic of coaching, because it relates to a lot of things. I mean, you're talking about Mike being a great coach and the good teachers you've had, but also kind of the intuition for athletes. And then you mentioned something that stood out to me early. You were talking about your athletic career going on, and then Louis saying, "If you're fast, I can make you strong."
Yes.
I had the pleasure of interviewing a couple of top World's Strongest Man competitors, and this trend is starting to emerge where a lot of guys are coming out of deep athletic background, and like an American athletic background where it's multi-varied and they played so many different sports, and then 10 15 years in, then they start lifting and they just fucking explode. And one of the guys I talked to recently, Luke Hatton, said basically I'd spent so much time in athletics and track and throwing and everything else that I had 15 years of GPP.
Yep.
So now that when I come into strength, I can specialize and I can just do the same damn thing. And that was like a really huge moment just recently where it really clicked. How much do you credit or do you recognize that connection to like your athletic background and your like relatively quick rise to being really damn strong?
100%. And it's beyond physical. I think there's a mental component. When I was this is just so you understand. When I was in high school, I threw the discus. I ran track, but I loved the discus. And I'm 5'10", 185 pounds in high school. I threw 165, which is pretty good for a guy that's not very big. I ended up, I think I was like 10th in the state during the state meet in Charleston. So, but I had to work my ass off. And I had one of the best coaches you could ever ask for in discus, and he actually taught me a lot about lifting. He was the guy that got me started on the right track. But when you throw disc, it's this, you spin, and it's this gradual speed, okay, and you build up. Well, everyone starts way too fast, right? So he said, listen, every time you get in there, you have to be methodical. Everything has to be perfect all the time. Slow yourself down. Okay, so that stayed with me. It's just nice and tight, but loose, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So everything's perfect. Be methodical. When I squatted 1,000 pounds, what do you think I did? I'm just methodical. I'm just going to lock it in and I'm going to do exactly what I had. That taught me more. The football, and obviously overcoming. Football was you put you through the meat grinder. Especially back in the day where you had 3-a-days and you hit all the time. But the men, and you're always tired, all that other stuff. That played a huge part. So not only just the hard football training and stuff like that, but the learning how to be under pressure. And I'll never forget, Louis was the king of trash talk, right? So that was probably my first year in there. And listen, whether I loved Louis, I respect Louis, the smartest man I've ever met in training. But you can't back down. I remember in football, whenever I would go to, when I went to the Air Force Academy or went to Arizona, I'd always fight the first day. Always. Because you have to kind of establish where you are. Even if you get your ass kicked. I'm like, I'll fight. I don't really care. Louis started talking trash to me. Okay? When we were squatting. And I said, shut up, old man. I've played more in front of more people in one game than you've lifted in front of your entire life. Now, it's not meant for me. That's not an insult because I love Louis, but it's like, I've played in a stadium of 85,000 people. No, they're not all watching me, but you think so. And you learn how to calm your nerves a little bit and stuff like that. So yeah, besides the physical aspects of everything that you learn, I think the mental aspects play a part. I got asked one time, I was at a Swiss conference and we had a panel. It was Bill Kazmaier was on there. And I was like, oh shit, what am I going to say that Bill Kaz? And someone asked me, what do you think the most important thing for a young lifter to do is? I said, you got to play as many sports as possible. You're going to get physically better and you're going to be exposed to different coaching and different methods. Because your baseball coach is going to be very different than your track coach, who's going to be different than your football coach and all that other stuff. And he looked at me, he's like, God damn, that's good. Because Bill was a great athlete too. People forget he was a good thrower and a football player. He might have been a thrower, but he was at Auburn. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I'm not bananas because Bill Kazmaier believes what I said. But I think there's a mental component to suffering in sports that more people would do better with in lifting. Now, there's always going to be those freaks out there that maybe started lifting at a young age and that's all they did, but you can't. This has been a big bugaboo of mine the last 2 years. I've had some massive realizations. The freaks can't define what you do if you're an average dude. It just doesn't work. So I've had kind of an eye-opener with that. So yeah, maybe so-and-so started lifting and got really good and that's all they did, but you know what, you're not deadlifting 800 pounds when you're 18 years old, buddy. You barely did 275 with straps and a belt. So
you can see those guys out there. The one that comes to mind, and I mean, for however strong I've ever got, I absolutely fall in this mold because I started playing football late. I actually first went out for football in Charleston, having no prior athletic background whatsoever, and got my shit pushed in for 3 years. But it was the best decision I ever made. Because I wouldn't be here. Shout out to Coach Halsey. I mean, if he didn't tell me to keep doing it, despite sucking, I wouldn't have done anything. But I have very poor motor skills. I'm not very athletic, but somebody that comes to mind, like Larry Wheels is a good example. If you watch, people make fun of him whenever he runs because you can tell there isn't a deep athletic background there. But the guy has such a huge response to training that how do you even compare? It's apples to elephants. What a training stimulus does to that guy versus anybody else. So, you know, and then you get into the debate of like, you know, it's kind of like, well, what do you have your kids do? Do you go the Tiger Woods route and just hit a million golf balls, or do you do a multivariate approach? And I mean, I used to be very kind of, you know, all you need is a barbell starting strength and you can scale that up and it's bare bones and it's simple. But I'm really charitable, more so now, to a lot of the models that have even young strength athletes starting out with dumbbells and unilateral stuff and more body weight work, because it just does so much to patch holes before they become holes. And I'm assuming, having worked with so many athletes yourself, that you've seen that in the flesh.
1,000%. Have you ever read the Naim Suleimanoglu book?
No, I haven't. I did a little piece on him for a video, but I didn't read the book about him.
There's like the Russian manual books, you know, the ones that are spiral bound. I don't know if it's still available. They detailed all his training as a young man. It was running, monkey bars, you know, walking on the dips, you know, push-ups, all that other stuff. Now, this was a guy who was very clear-cut going to Olympic lifting from an early age. That's what his track was. And even then, he had a very varied approach, you know. And, you know, most of those guys always played soccer, not competitively, but they would go out and play. So they were exposed to a lot of different activities. But I'll say this is, you know, there's only a few Tiger Woods out there. Even if your kid hits a million golf balls and, you know, you pressure them and they have a good attitude, there's only a few of them. The majority of us are what I call just average dudes, and you have to take advantage of as many physical skills as you can before you specialize. It's always that. And it's hard for parents to understand that. Like, well, why isn't my kid, you know, Michael Jordan? Well, you know why? Because you're not Michael Jordan. That's why. Your wife's not good either, you know, and that's the truth. You know who Tom Mislinski is? He used to be at Elite FDS, for professional football player. Used to be a strength coach. I don't know if he still is in the NFL, but he had the best answer I've ever seen. Someone asked him how to increase a vertical jump. His answer was, get new parents. So the point being is that a lot of this, if the kids don't have those great genetics, you have to build a varied base. And again, it's a tough pill for, you know, for kids to swallow or for parents to swallow. It's like, it's okay. Like, listen, you can still be amazing. You can still, you know, achieve things that you never thought possible. But the quicker you realize that your kid isn't Tiger Woods, the better off you're going to be and the better off they're going to be. And not just physically, but mentally too. So, but you know, I coach at the London High School here in town. We do all the football training. My wife does all the junior high training. Her training is teaching them how to do the lifts, and then they just do a bunch of other gymnastics stuff. Not gymnastics, but like PE stuff. You know, a lot of running stadiums and, you know, carrying weights and doing push-ups and learning how to do forward rolls and cartwheels and stuff like that. It all helps, man. And our blueprint at London and the junior high of making average dudes amazing is, I think, as good as you're going to find. It's not perfect by any means, but we are incredibly consistent and we do things right. And essentially, high school football at this level is average dude versus average dude. That's all it is. Every once in a while, you're going to get the freak, right? Nothing I can do lifting-wise or training-wise is going to make my kid any better than this kid who's 6'5", 260, and runs a 4.4. But holy shit, our average guys are going to beat the crap out of your average guys all game long. I've seen it happen ever since we started training like this. We've made the playoffs. We made the Final Four last year, the only public school to make the Final Four. If our D line was 160 pounds, 170 pounds, just wrecking dudes because they're stronger. They can outlast. So my big focus was, listen, it's cool to look at what the freaks are doing and all this advanced training stuff. Like I was obsessed with it. But how dumb was that? I wasn't an advanced person until the very end. It's stupid. It's a pipe dream. Make your average dudes awesome. And the best way to do that is varied stuff, be consistent, be effort. You just got to kind of, I don't want to say outwork so much, because that, obviously people like do too much sometimes. But we're just going to, my wife says this, consistency is a superpower. We will out-consistent anyone. We don't take weeks off at London. So we don't have to train very hard. We train smart. Kids give great effort. But when you come in 52 weeks out of the year, you can have some workouts you're like, it's not that great. But you know what? You gave great effort. You did what I asked you to do. You came in and participated, and you kicked ass. Let's go ahead and let's come back to fight another day. So anyway, I'm obsessed with making average dudes better, because that's what I was. And I wish someone would have had the heart to tell me that.
And I relate to that hugely. I put myself in the kind of, mid. I mean, my genetics were good enough to do anything I've done, obviously, but it's weird now the state we're in with the internet. It's like if you had a restaurant that's been around for 100 years, and then they just got the ability to do surveys from customers like last week. So now with the internet, you get close to the consumers, the people you're writing for, making books for, educating, and you're actually seeing all the problems they deal with in real time. And one of them is that lack of understanding about like the hierarchy and where they should be aiming for. So everybody looks towards the best. That's where they pull all their information from. Those are the programs they're doing. They're like, hey, the Bulgarians got really good doing, an ass load of max singles. Let's do that. That's a great way to do it. And people still do it and defend it. Like, the body adapts, bro. And it's like, wait until it doesn't, because that's going to be a rude fucking awakening. Their expectations that it's like the best or trash, where it's like, you can get so good. You can get so good if you stop doing this stupid shit. And people blackpill themselves into thinking like, what's the point? It's like, the point is you can be 3 times better than you are right now. But your brain is rotted with whatever Instagram's putting in your head. And you've come to think that that's the only thing that you should settle for, or it's not worthwhile. And that's what really gets my ass. Guys, if you want to hit the holy trifecta of gains, the size, the strength, and of course the clout, you need a program that checks the biggest boxes. Not only does it use the best time-tested movements that you are actually likely to stick to and improve on, but it includes a logical progression that is based on my most popular programs. These are programs that have gotten rave reviews from people that literally just ran the template. BaseStrengthLP uses 3 of the most proven templates pulled from the principles of some of the biggest, strongest men in history that have been used for over a century. The workouts are fun, intuitive, there's a logical progression, but it does take it up a notch because it personalizes the workouts to you. As you get bigger, stronger, more advanced, it becomes harder to tick those numbers forward, and you can't get by not adjusting your workouts to your own particular tolerances. Now, most people get an online coach to take care of that for them to the tune of $200 to $300 a month, and the rest of the people just never figure it out to begin with. So if you're wondering why you start every training cycle super excited only to get several weeks in, feel brittle, overtrained, tired, disillusioned, like you're just a dodgeball and the program is the side of a building, then you need direction that updates your training minute to minute, day to day, week to week based on your immediate feedback. BaseStrengthLP takes the guesswork out of training, and it does what only an online coach can do, which is personalize the program to you at 1/10 of the cost. Yes, 1/10 of the cost. So jump on the heart and soul of old school training. It's my programming, but it is your program, and you cannot get that anywhere else. Hit up basestrength.com today to get started on your gains. You had said that this has been a bugaboo for you for the last couple years. I'm curious kind of if there's something specific that triggered that.
We played a team one year. It was probably my second or third year, and the year prior they kicked the shit out of us. The next year, we didn't have a quarterback. Our quarterback got hurt. We just put a running back in there and said, dude, learn how to take some snaps. It was like 60-0 at halftime. I think we rushed for like 600 yards. We scored a touchdown with 9 guys on the field. It was fucking like everything we did worked. We're just, and we weren't bigger. We were just stronger. So the strength coach walks over to me. I don't know. I didn't know who he was, but he introduced himself and he's like, "Hey, I got to ask you, what do you guys do?" And this light bulb went off. It was one of those weird moments where I thought clarity. And I said, goal is for my average guy to kick your average guy's asses. That's the only thing I worry about. Because we would play teams where, like I said, a guy would be just a freak. It's like, what are you going to do? You know? But in high school, there's not a lot of those. So I'm not going to worry about that. If the team's better, the team's better. And then I started looking at our kids, and we've only had one Division I athlete since I've been here. Okay? We've had probably 2 other guys who probably could have went, but they went to a smaller school. So let's just say 3 kids who I think could have played at a higher level, like Division I. So we've had so much success at London with average guys. And I was like, that's when I realized how important, because we all want that kid who's amazing, but we're not going to get him. We got a lot of kids, a lot of them have really good athletic ability, but Ohio State's not coming down and talking to us. So I realized, like, this is the kids that I have. These kids look like me when I was a kid. And how would I want these kids to train? And what's the leg up we can get? So what if the kid can't deadlift 600? He went from 95, for 1 to 275 for 15. He's gotten, you know what kind of confidence this bruise in this kid, the self-esteem that he has when he walks down the field, knowing that he could, again, it's not 600 pounds, but it's better. It's way better. And I know that he knows that guy in front of him doesn't have that. Even if he might deadlift a little more, I'm just giving examples. I'm not saying deadlift is the king of everything. He knows that he's put in the work. And, when we play a home game, I always address the team on the field for about a minute. And I said, everyone stop and look around. We do the prowler every Friday, regardless. Not during the season, but during the off season. It's part of our training. It's a miserable experience for our kids. I don't make them throw up. It just sucks. Have you pushed the prowler?
Yes.
It sucks.
Yes, I've pushed the prowler.
So we pushed the prowler, rain or shine, snow. And I said, look around this. How many laps have you guys done with the prowler? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, do you think anyone's worked harder than you? And that's the kind of thing I want our kids to understand, that they put in the work. It means something. And not only does it mean something to them and their parents and stuff, but it shows itself in the score. And I always liked it. Our first game that we played after I took over the off season, it was an away game. And I remember I was getting the kids warmed up, and I almost puked like 7 times, because I'm like, these kids worked so hard. Like, they didn't take a single week off. We lost our final game. And I took over the next week. I said, do you guys want to take a week off? 0 people. Nope, we're coming in. Now, this is the team that hadn't won many games. And I said, holy shit, they didn't even know who I was. Okay. So it was this outsider coming in. What the hell does this guy know? He's all tatted up. He's not even from London. So the point being is, I remember that first game thinking, holy shit, if I'm going to find out how good I am, I'm going to find out how good the training was. I mean, we bulldozed this team, and every kid would run off the field, those fuckers can't squat shit, and they didn't do this. And I was so proud, because they took pride in their work. And but the bottom line is, I got so sucked into the advanced stuff, even when I was younger, thinking that it meant something, when the reality was I needed to do the basics and do them right all the time. And I really did when I was younger, but as I got up, I kept on thinking I was too good for that stuff, and it's not true. You still got to be able to run. You got to run a mile. Yes, you're not going to run a mile, but you have to have that physical abilities. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, you need to be so good physically when you're average that you have a chance against the freaks. You got to do that to yourself. I tell that to every walk-on that contacts me, because I walked on at Arizona. I didn't have a scholarship when I first got there. I said, 1, make sure you're always on time. Number 2, get terrific grades. You don't want to be a liability in the grades department. Number 3, you should be physically fit beyond like Navy SEAL shit. I'm not saying train like a Navy SEAL, but that is a direct reflection of your work ethic and character for those coaches that don't know you. So you shouldn't be huffing and puffing. You shouldn't be, you should have some muscle on you, stuff like that. So, anyway, I'm getting all worked up because I get upset that I got bamboozled. I really did. And I regret that. So
it's a lot of wasted years to try to correct that and learn it the right way.
Yeah.
I had a good buddy of mine, Joe Buckley, and he was the head strength and conditioning coach for University of Redlands in California.
Oh, my buddy went there.
And oh, really?
Yeah.
Small world, man. Joe was only out there for I think a handful of years as head coach, but he would give me like the inside scoop because I'm only on the outside seeing what all the CS guys are posting on Instagram or whatever. But I mean, Joe was himself. He was a pretty good competitive strongman, and he would just talk about the clusterfuck when you would go to like conferences or seminars of everybody trying to reinvent the wheel, of people throwing out gimmicky shit, because if training is this big blunt tool that you can only tweak so many different ways, and if there's a lot of things that tend to work, and if genetics really determines who's going to get that next leap, then it's like everybody has this incentive to try to take the same basic shit and just brand it differently.
Yes.
Let's make a presentation about the importance of the big toe or something, and it's just all like the minutia that can't possibly make any difference, that you can't possibly have any actual surgical ability with, and that becomes the entire culture, and people eat it up because when you don't know any better, of course, why wouldn't it be this really high-minded shit that's out of my wheelhouse? And it just absolutely fucks everybody, including like the recreational lifter who should have it the absolute easiest, but is eating up all this garbage.
Well, because I live near Columbus, Ohio State football, as you can imagine, is massive. Now, the one thing you have to understand, like their fourth string guy is a 5-star athlete, right? The guy who's rarely going to see the field. Think about that for a second. He was the best player in his state. Do you think it matters that much what his training is? No.
As long as he doesn't get injured.
Yeah. So people look at Ohio State or LSU or Alabama. What are you guys doing? You know what we do? We recruit better. We got better facilities. We got a shit ton of money. We have a long storied past of excellence. And like you said, people look to those guys like, oh, Ohio State must be good because their training's so good. It's like, no, they have a freshman wide receiver who's 6'4", 215 and runs like the wind. He's like, that's why. That doesn't mean training is not important for them, but it's much the lower you are on the totem pole, the more important consistently training smart is important. There you go.
Yeah, I don't think we even, for all the science and shit, I don't even think we have a handle on what the important aspects of training are, because intuitively it is important. But, look, this bears out in sports, obviously. It bears out in Olympic lifting. Look at the most winningest gold medals, countries with the most gold medals, and you're looking at vastly different training approaches. Yep. Same thing with bodybuilding. People still bitch about volume versus high intensity. Same thing about powerlifting. You have some guys who are just bodybuilders. Other guys are Westside. Other guys are, periodized, whatever. And it's like, well, in some aspect, everything works, but that doesn't really mean that everything works for you. And it's like, until we can get down to the level of the individual, we really don't know shit. Which is like the most frustrating thing that I have, because trying to talk to a big group of people like, hey, this is how I think you're all going to get strong. In reality, it's like, I need to decode your fucking genome, bro, and put you through a twin study before I can know what's going to be the best thing for you. But we don't have that, so trial and error, focus on the big shit, and it's like, what else can you really do? That's
for me, because there's one coach at London. We have like 60 kids. So you talk about like, listen, not everything's going to work perfectly for you. But there's going to be a lot of crossover, and for the most part, I have kind of a formula that I use, and I don't care who you are, you got to be consistent, and you got to give some effort, And I think sometimes people forget that, but you're right, because I work with ex-football player who's still playing in college, and I work with him one-on-one. He's a family friend, a great kid. But now I can start tweaking stuff. Like, this is like the mad scientist shit that I get to do. And it's so much fun. Because when you're working a big group, like, listen, imagine 60 fucking knuckleheads in one room with like Metallica blasting. That's why like coaching is an art form of great communication. People want to discuss X's and O's. I'm like, you really think 5 reps is different than 8 reps for a kid who squats 100 pounds? You think that's going to make any difference? How about I get them to do it, like I get them on a timer and I'm happy that they're doing things right. You know, so there's, that's the other thing is the art of coaching. Like coaching's different than training. When I work with the kid in my garage, that's training him. I can go one-on-one. We can adjust based on bar speed, right? You can just make all the, like, how you feeling? Oh, his elbow's hurting. You can't make those adjustments in a big group. I mean, you can if all the group is tired, then you adjust, right? But not individually. So that's why the art of coaching is a lesson in patience. And I'll tell you what, like, thank God I was a father before I really started coaching, because then you look, being a parent is, you start to see where patience comes into play. It really does. So.
I wish I had that. I owned a gym for about 6 years, and I did a lot of one-on-one coaching there. And I did for a lot of years as training, but I wish I had that experience. My son just turned 1 in January, and I feel like this would have prepared me for coaching more than coaching ever would have prepared me for this.
Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
I got 2. I got, so 20 and 13. So my
how were
youngest,
they influenced by your?
So here's
are they in athletics? I'm assuming.
Yeah, my oldest son played football and played soccer, and what was crazy is during the pandemic, I trained my son remotely. So we got on like I don't know, FaceTime or whatever it was, and I would just take him through the training. Does that make sense? So like, hey, put this on the bar, do this, and I coached him. Doesn't really care about training. Didn't care at all. But he's, you know, like he gets to hang out with dad, we get to lift some weights together, whatever. It's fun. So his, the spring of his senior year, he comes over here and we started doing some weight vest stuff and just farting around. And, he was like 215 pounds or something like that. He's 6'1", so, but he's not like shredded or anything. So he asked me a couple questions. I said, listen, man, if you want me to help you out again, love to do it. No, I'm going to try something. So 3 months go by. He doesn't say a fucking word to me. His mom calls me up and says, hey, has Mason talked to you at all? I'm like, yeah, I talk to him all the time. Did he tell you about his training? I'm like, no. He took it upon himself. He said, I didn't want to tell you what I was doing until I was 1,000% committed. He went from 215 to like 170, did nothing but weight vest walks, like, or he filled up his backpack with dumbbells and did squats, push-ups, sit-ups, and chin-ups until he was blue in the face. He just trained as hard as he could. He's like, I started with like 50 squats and 50 push-ups, whatever it was. I don't know what it was. And he goes, it killed me the first day. And now he's got a chin bar in his apartment. I got him dip stands. I got him some, a couple other things he has, but he trains like an absolute beast now. And so when he comes and visits us, we always do the worst challenge we can think of physically. We'll do just the dumbest thing we can. And now it's every day we talk to each other. Hey, what'd you do today? Man, I just had to phone it in. I just did, 300 dips and 500 squats. I just did. And I was like, holy shit, that's you phoning it in. Like, I suck. My youngest son, we started training him very early. And what I mean by that is every day since he could walk, basically, or since he could kind of learn, we did something with him. But it was like one squat, one jump, one push-up. Okay, and what this did was it set the tone for this is something we do every day, and there's an expectation to do it. That's all that was. It was building the daily habit. Does that make sense? After a certain point, we started lifting him, but it was like with 10-pound barbells. Just taught him stuff. Still doesn't really care, but now he's gotten obviously much better. He plays football, and I still work with him personally. My wife does a lot of his training over at the high school, because he's still in junior high, but whatever, they train at the high school. Still doesn't really care, but he's, last year, maybe last school year, he did 17 pull-ups. which was the best on the football team. Couldn't care less about doing them. Every time I take him in the weight room, but he knows it's only going to be 15 minutes. We're going to do things, I don't overtrain him or overwork him or anything like that. But it's his understanding that this is a habit that we have in our family. Just like when we took him to swimming lessons. That's important for a young kid to have. You have to have the ability to swim. I don't care if you're on the swim team, right? I don't want my kid to be out of, in the water and not know how to swim. We instructed him in wrestling and boxing. He takes boxing. He has to learn how to be physical and fight. I do not want him in Columbus, Ohio, when he's 25 to get punched in the mouth for the first time. He has to be ready for some physicals, and it teaches you discipline and all that other stuff. Same with football. It's part of growing up to be a young man. You have to learn to be physical, and I don't want him to resort to violence, but I've been punched in the head a bunch of times. It sucks. But every time I got punched in the head after the first time, I knew what was coming. Like I knew, listen, this is going to be fine. Like my ear is going to stop ringing. Does that make sense? And so all these kind of life lessons that we taught were not sports related, because whether or not he plays football or not, I don't care. I love football. I hope he does. I hope he wants to play. But his physical health is a priority. And part of that is strength training. It's running. Him and my wife do 5Ks all the time. It's an expectation. And now he's like, yeah, I'll do it. I don't care. He just did the OSU 4-miler. And, he doesn't know how to run that fast. He's not terribly fast, but you know what? He grinds it all through and finishes. And so as a family, physical training is important. Whether it's for sports, that's up to him. Now, we still going to listen, you got to have to play something. You don't get to sit around on your ass all day. You got to do something. So, and people ask me well, my kid doesn't want to do it. Well, kid doesn't want to brush his teeth either. What are you going to do? Well, that's just the way it goes, I guess. My kid doesn't want to eat. Well, what are you going to feed him Snicker bars all day? You got to be a parent. And not his best friend. And I'm not asking him to go be Tiger Woods. He does a couple benches and dumbbell squats and box jumps. Oh, I'm Marv Marinovich now. Do you know?
Yeah, it's weird how society, and I living in California, I think we dealt with this a lot because, it got looked at like it was almost oppressive to make somebody go through PE if they didn't want to. And it makes no earthly sense why that would be different than making somebody sit through math class or anything else that they don't give a shit about, that they hate, that they actively don't want to do. And of course, physical activity, it's play. In some sense, it's always going to be fun. It's only not fun if you're so deconditioned that it's literal torture. And that's kind of what we're looking towards. It's I could care less what sport he does. I just know that he's going to be social and have fun. And I want him to think of it positively too. And I think you hit something really important there by talking about starting small, minimum expectations, making it a habit. And that shows the immense power of habits and consistency and saying, this is just something I do day to day. Because, you don't care about it. And people don't care about math, but they're happy that they can count change without holding up the fucking line at the 7-Eleven. And then in a lot of ways, you're just going to blow past everybody that has their spurts of motivation here and there because the habit is infinitely more important than those grand moments. That's a big point because I'm already trying to think of how am I going to introduce Theo to physical activity. We already got him a little soft foam dumbbell and he's he waddles around the gym. We try not to let a weight fall on him.
We set up, oh my God, if my wife were here, we have these, I don't know what they're called, stepping stones or something. They're for kids and we set them up all over the house. And some are higher, some are lower, some are farther apart. And he was jumping on them, walking, running. And we set them up all over. We're putting a chin bar in our house. We have dip stands in our house that he just comes over there and swings on and does some dips and whatever. So and we did a ton of jumping and landing and running. So we set up obstacle course in our backyard. It just random shit. It wasn't like we had anything, we had a rope and we'd set up different stuff. You got to jump over this. You got to roll on this. You got to, whatever, jump off of this and stuff like that. So it was fun. And that counted as his training for the day, so to speak. But what ends up happening is there's a couple things. Is one, if you are I'm not talking about Ronnie Coleman. If you are physically fit, your self-esteem at a young age is amazing, okay? And that helps set a lot of your social relationships, not just with people, with your relationship to people, but how you feel around other people. I see kids at a young age, 14, 12, 11 years old, who are so morbidly obese. I saw a kid who couldn't get off the ground. He could not physically get off the ground. Someone had to pick him up. He was 11 years old. I couldn't believe it. But what ends up happening is you'll never have to fight, how do I put this? People who are overweight, let's just say until they're 25 years old, their body set point is determined, and they have the rest of their life they're going to be fighting this demon, this fat demon, where everything has to be perfect in their life. They can't go out, how they relate to society is all based on what they eat. Okay, does that make sense? They always think that they're the fat guy. When you're in shape, you don't even worry about that shit. It doesn't even, like, I didn't have to worry about what I ate until like 3 years ago. You know how awesome that was? I just didn't care. And even though, yes, I was massive when I was powerlifting, but I dropped all that weight, and I just kind of stopped eating crap, and I was fine. So, like, your relationship to society, if you are in shape, it's just one less thing you got to worry about. I dated a girl one time who was overweight when she was in high school. Her whole life was about, diet and eating. It's like, God, I don't want to live like that. I want to drink some beers. I don't care. Like, I never think about that. And I see it with kids all the time that come in who are overweight, high school kids, they maybe start when they're a freshman. Once they're able to do a pull-up, the way they walk is different. The way that they see how they work within society is different. They stand taller. They feel better. And so, yes, it sucks getting there. But all of a sudden, you got a kid who couldn't do a push-up, and now he's able to do a pull-up. His chin's a little higher. He's able to take on whatever the world gives him because, fuck yeah, look at me. I did a pull-up. And Mike Miller, we talk about Mike Miller. He trained a lot of normal people. You know what he found? Was picking up stones. Now, he would have these stones made that were light enough but big enough. You could wrap your hands around. He's like, I went into this lawyer's office that I used to train. He goes, he's got a picture of his parent or his kids, his wife, and then there was a picture of him holding like the 200-pound stone. That was that important to this guy. He's a lawyer. And he's like, I realized how important it was for them to do some out-of-the-box stuff, so to speak, or, whatever. The pull-up is great, too. But how important it is for everyone. So I just want to give my kid a chance. That's it. I just want to I don't want him behind the 8 ball on something that I had 1,000% control over. So.
The control. And it's such an easy place to capitalize on. It's like if you're going to start a business, you're going to look for the niche where there's demand, but it's also easy access because there's no competition.
Yes.
And it's like these hills, they mean so much because they're so rare in the general population, but they're rare just because nobody fucking does it, not because they're impossible. So of all the things you could set your sights on to do, it's like, hey, not only is this very doable in a pretty short period of time, but also everybody's going to look at you different. It's a no-brainer why you would dedicate yourself to go there. And then for the development of boys, and this is something I'm looking into a lot too, the whole butterfly effect, like the earlier you start with those good associations, the more deeply ingrained they become, the more they influence every single interaction you ever have. It changes the way you associate good feelings with these activities that people have these complexes over. And it's to the point where, like, I'm getting into like how boys develop a little bit slower than girls, to where like the average reading level of like a 5-year-old boy is that of like a 3.5-year-old girl. So where it makes sense, where boys are struggling, and they're struggling so much in school now, where it's like you would almost be justified in holding them back because that first year is so goddamn important. If they enjoy it and they don't feel stupid, they're going to do so much better every day, every year, up to the rest of their lives. And physical development and your self-esteem is no different.
Well, we could have put our youngest son in a grade earlier, and we didn't, for that exact same reason. I don't want him to struggle in math class. I want him to be like, I'll do my work, just like you said, like he was, technically, I guess, 9 months ahead of everyone else. So, I don't want everything to be Like, listen, yes, we need struggle, right, to grow. But it doesn't have to be walking to school and you're dying of, out of breath, or the fact that you can't understand what the teacher's saying. Like, let's do other struggles other than the normal shit that, like you said, is like an easy way. Like, let's just give the kid a leg up. And the funny thing is, with my oldest son, he laughs like, I don't know because he lost all the weight he knows how to eat and diet, but he's like, it's very simple. He goes, it's not difficult to do some of this stuff. I'm like, dude, you're also 20 years old. I mean, you're like prime for building muscle and stuff like that. But, he set himself up for life these last couple of years, and I'm super proud of him. And I'm super proud of the fact that he didn't want my help. Like, that's a stubborn that I'm like, dude, you have a prime resource, you dumb shit. Like, I could, and, but he's like, no, I wanted to prove to you that I could do it by myself. And I was super proud of that.
That's huge.
That phone call from my ex-wife. I don't like getting phone calls from my ex-wife, but that was awesome. So.
No, that's awesome. That's a proud dad moment. It shows it's not just that you can do something, but you're competent enough to put it together without help, and that you think it's important to do it without help. It's an art form of trying to balance the right amount of assistance with the right amount of
it's tough,
be self-sufficient. But that's fantastic to hear, man. And I look forward to hearing these stories because, I'm right up against it. And as of right now, it's like the future's wide open. It's like, are we going to be going to state meets in 18 years, or are we going to be going to a rehab clinic? It all starts right here.
It's stressful as shit. I'm telling you. The only thing I'm going to tell you guys, like I tell this to everyone, is live as far below your financial means as possible. And number two, you and your wife, that's the most important relationship, is you two, not your kid. Because if that foundation isn't there, then everything else goes to shit. It's like an aerobic base. Think about it like that. That doesn't mean that you guys spend all your time together and ignore your kid. It just means make sure that shit is stable. And the easiest way to do that is making sure your finances are in order. Like, we live so financially frugal, it's ridiculous. And I don't care. I don't live in a big home. We don't have brand new cars or anything like that, So anyway, that's my advice with parenting, because that takes a lot of the stress away. So, and don't move like an idiot. So, I mean, you hit a nail on the head right there with the importance of your spouse. I was looking right now for, there was a quote I had screenshotted from your blog a while ago, but I can't find it. But you were touching on that same point about the importance of a spouse. And that's something, I mean, we could talk about programming things that piss me off all day, but in general society, how ass backwards people have relationships and how they go about it and how important that is for driving the rest of your life. We started a little late. I mean, I'm in my late 30s and we just had our first kid, but I'm so happy we did, because any point before this, I was an idiot, and my partner selection, even the partners I could have selected for back then, would have been great. It would have been like, just make the best with what you got. And instead I waited, and I don't know how some people do it. And actually I was married very briefly, which I like to pretend just didn't happen, because that's exactly what it was. It was like, maybe I'll be more of an adult. It's like solving your marriage problems by having a kid. Like, maybe I'll be more of an adult if I just... It's terrible. So now I'm fortunate, because I did find somebody who is educated but also has very hard good conservative instincts and is a caretaker, and she like makes me want to be better, and we communicate so well, and it's like so rock solid, where now we're with this kid and I'm like, how do people do it when they don't have this? It doesn't even make sense to me, given all of that. But I'm just so fortunate, because I'm seeing all these advantages that our child's going to have just for the fact that he has two parents that know how to talk to each other and have high standards. It's heartwarming, Well, I've never seen my parents fight ever, and I've never saw my parents. Now maybe they did. I don't know. Like, they don't strike me as the kind of people that do that. My dad is super patient, by the way. So I'm sure with my wife and I, we've never had a fight. We've been together for 15 years, I've never had a fight with her in my life. And the reason we always said is like, I want my home to be somewhere safe I can go to and not feel like I'm getting nagged to death or like there's some kind of something brewing. I want like, so when I leave the house, everything can go to shit and I can come home and have I hate to say this, a safe space, but this is my home. I want it to be a good place. I want it to be somewhere my son can come home to and feel like welcome and not like, mom and dad. So it's been a big thing, and we've mostly my wife's doing because I'm such a, she's much more balanced than I am. I'm kind of bananas emotionally sometimes. Like something happens, I'm like, fucking everyone's dying, we're here comes Rambo. But that's kind of the give and take of a good marriage. But I think we were both older when, we already had that shitty relationship kind of thing happen. So, but what's funny is you said, how do people do it? Well, you see what happens when people have that shitty marriage and raising kids. You can see it firsthand. You see like 30-year-old people who can't control their emotions. Now, obviously I'm very emotional, but I'm not going out and stomping my feet like a retard. Sorry, idiot. But you know what I'm saying? Like you see the result of what this is, and you have grown adults who can't control their emotions in public. It's really weird to me. But anyway, whatever. All right, you had another thing coming up. Sorry.
It's the same habits as everything else. Those expectations are held for you young, and you model it enough, and it just becomes part of who you are. And it is, and this is something that is a little close to me. It's tangential, but the mental health is kind of like a family business. My wife's a social worker. I worked with groups for a while at the gym. My dad was a psychiatrist, so we know our way around crazy. But one of the best things I ever did, I was part of a 12-step program when I was like 12. One of the most transformative things, it was for family members of addicts, whatever, but you learn boundaries and barriers and codependency, and you learn how to spot red flags. So you see the emotional dysregulation, and then you see where it comes from, and you can spot it. And that's one of the reasons I wouldn't be married to who I am right now if I didn't have that ability to be like, oh, that's something special right there.
Yes.
But all of that led to a better decision that impacted the rest of my life and my kids' life. And it's that butterfly effect. But we have adults that have such a juvenile sense of relationships. There's literally adults that still believe in like love at first sight. And I'm like, you should be looking at this like a business partner. Like you're going to spend the rest of your life, build your family, build your finances with somebody based off that. Like, would you start a business based off that? Is there like, best friend at first sight? Is there business partner at first sight? But if you have that grounding, everything just becomes so much easier and gratifying. I sound like I'm on my high horse up here, but it's like when you find something that works, you want everybody else to know why it works, and maybe they get a better outcome as well. So refreshing to hear that take. I do want to bring it back really quick, and we can probably wrap it up on this note. We went a little longer than I told you, but this is all right. Fantastic.
I enjoyed talking to you, man.
Oh, thank you. Likewise, I want to hit on the programming beat a little bit because you said something in the past, and I know this is shit you've all covered like 5 million times by now, but one of the things that stood out to me when I went through my 5-3-1 phase, and then ever since, because it's been 15 years, like congratulations on the legacy of what is a heavily influential piece that is still a staple in the field. But when I went through that phase, one of the things I noticed when I was trying to wrap my head around the whole sphere of programming is how seemingly different it was from a lot of the wisdom at the time, whether it's, it's low frequency, relatively so. It's an AMRAP set as opposed to doing something really heavy or really max effort, the wave structure and on. And then, of course, the variability and the flexibility of it. If you were to kind of take a 30,000 foot view of like this entity, the 531 program, what do you kind of like credit to what you were doing at Westside or your competitive career? And what do you think is specifically different? I know it's a very broad, open-ended question, but
listen, I remember being in the parking lot with Lou, and Lou was hard to understand if you didn't know him. I always like to say that if you listen to an interview with Lou and you didn't know him, like didn't spend time with him like I did, not saying I spent a million years with him, but I always like imagine like him throwing every word that he said up on a wall, and then you have to take a step back and look at like a 3D picture, and then only the words that you need to know come out. Does that make sense? And it's like, oh, that's what he was saying. It had nothing to do with dynamic benching. He was talking about whatever. I'm just making this up. So I think the one thing that Lou always, and we were sitting outside by my truck hanging out, and he's like, you know, the one thing we always, we try to, and this is something he said, is just we have to train optimally. And what that means to different people, it'll change, but that's where, when I was playing sports, and even when I was at Westside, like our strength would vary so much from day to day. I mean, it was crazy. Especially the stronger you get, the variables are crazy. It may still only be 10%, but when you're squatting 1,000, 10% is 100 pounds, and all of a sudden, like, what happened? You know, I squatted this, whatever. And so I think that's the training max really came into play with that, because as an athlete and stuff, and I always coach athletes, I always want my kids to have good days, always. And I train, obviously we do the physical training, but I want my kids to stack wins. That's all I want them to do. And the best way I know how to do that is to keep the training max low. So what? You're having a great day? Let's fucking put some more weight on the bar. If not, you still had a pretty good day, but they don't know they had a bad day. Because so much of what I do is I want my kids to feel like they've got confidence and they had a great day. They had at least a good day. Does that make sense? So I think when Louis talked about training optimally, I think there's a portion of me that understood, like, and one thing Louis said, he goes, I always remember these little snippets of Lou. He's like, you know why we put so many chains and bands and shit on the bar? I was like, why? He's like, because you don't know if you're going to have a bad day. You don't know. Like, you've never done this reverse sumo 60 bands on there. He's like, you just pull until you couldn't pull anymore. And you're like, hell yeah, dude, max out. You're like, I don't know, maybe it was the shittiest day I've ever. He's like, you just don't know. He goes, that's one of the best things about doing stuff like this. Now, obviously, we don't change exercises like that or anything when I'm training the kids. But I wanted my kids to stack wins. So I think that's one of the things I learned from Lou. And, you know, the other thing is the importance of assistance work. Now, here's where we talk about the advanced dudes and the average dudes, okay? You remember, and you probably don't remember this guy, but there was a guy who was at Elite FTS named James Smith. He's called the Thinker, okay? He was heavily influenced by the Russians and made everything super complicated. One of the best dudes I've ever met, and I always bust his balls because you couldn't ask for two different people, you know? And he said, I asked him about assistance work, and he said most of the big name lifters in Russia didn't really do it. He goes, because they were physically gifted at the lift. They didn't need to do it. Okay? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was like, well, maybe I don't need to do assistance lifts. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not physically, I'm not them. So that's why Lou put such a, one of the reasons why I think Lou put so much emphasis on assistance work is it allows you to drive some of your strength and hypertrophy without burning you out at all. And it's a great way to put on muscle, again, without burning you out. Now, let's say you're just an average guy and you're eating right and all that stuff. It's probably not going to matter that much. You're playing 3 sports for the last 6 years. You can't go squat 5 sets of 10 or do crazy volume on that because you got 3 practices that week. You got to do skill work for another sport on Saturday. And then, you know, you got, oh, thank God I got Sunday off. Oh, shit, I got to go to my parents' barbecue. We're going to play, you know, sport, whatever. So I have found that we always try to keep the barbell stuff within range. Now, that doesn't mean we never do anything hard. But if we're going to push anything, this is what I learned from Lou, is like we're going to push the assistance work. And I always tell the kids, this is where you have some sovereignty. If you want to go bananas, and I always coach them through stuff and make sure that they understand, let's go ahead and push it, because the consequences of doing dumbbell squats, for example, or dumbbell incline bench or dumbbell rows are much different than if we do, 30 sets of trap bar and everyone's sore the next day. Now we can't jump on Wednesday. We can't run after, that's for sure. We can't push the prowler. We can't do hills on Saturday. You understand what I'm saying? And that's one of the things I think Lou really got right, especially even I don't know if you remember the original West Side guys from Culver City, George Friend and Peanuts. Yeah. Those guys box squatted sometimes 3 times a week. Why? Box squats don't make you sore. It's the weirdest thing in the world. They figured it out. That's why George Friend did them, because he was one of the greatest hammer throwers of all time. He found out he could box squat and then still throw. And you talk about all this stuff coming full circle. Now in London, Ohio, I figured it out. Like, listen, we keep this kind of low here. As long as the bar speed is fast and everything is sharp, we're going to be fine. Now, we're still making progress, but I'm not driving these kids into the ground. Why? I got 4 years. Fuck, I got 6 years. Do I need to make Monday the greatest workout of all time? No. I want him to have a good, solid day. I want him to walk out, you know what? I did something, because he got a big pump, right? He did some dumbbell inclines, did some fucking curls. He feels good about himself, but we're always making progress, and we have we have the power of consistency on our side. So we just have really good days with the barbell, and then we body build. I said, everyone's getting fucking huge today, boys. Let's go. Everyone's getting the pump. And I always ask the kids, because I walk around. Assistance work they get to do on their own. I give them parameters and stuff. I walk up to them like, you got a pump yet? Hell yeah, coach. I mean, the kids they cannot wait. Like, feel this shit. Yeah. And that's what I want, because I'm going to tell you right now, the number one goal for me as a coach is to build muscle on my athletes. What? What about speed and power? You got a kid who's 5'10", 135 pounds. Do you think I'm concerned about his vertical jump, or does he need to put some muscle on? Now, Myles Garrett, you know who Myles Garrett is?
No.
Oh my God, I'm about to punch you in the wiener. Dick punch.
I know it's going to fail eventually.
Is a all-pro, going to be in the Hall of Fame NFL player. Okay. There's a picture
football,
of yeah. There's a picture of Myles Garrett in high school. Okay, I have it on my phone here. You could never take as many drugs or train hard to ever look like Myles Garrett did in high school. And more muscular, so he doesn't have to really worry about that too much. But guess what? Kid who's got all his ribs showing, kid who's got that pot belly, he's got the little smiley face in his because he's a little fat. You know what he needs to do? He needs to put on some muscle. And I'll never forget when I saw George Halbert for the first time. He was a 198 or 220er. Okay, I see George Halbert dead on, like we're looking at each other right now, right? Looks like a guy who lifts weights. He turns to the side, his chest and upper back were equidistant from his spine. Biggest, most muscular dude I've ever seen in the upper body. Oh my God. Do you know who Boyd Epley is? Come on.
No, I don't.
Okay, Boyd Epley is the godfather of strength coaches. He was the first strength coach in college football. Coached the crazy Nebraska teams back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Real quick, he one of the greatest strength coaches. He basically modernized strength training for high school or for college athletes, and he coached some of the greatest teams in college football. He always said his number one rule is to get his players as muscular as possible. Because in general, a bigger muscle is going to be a stronger muscle. It's going to be a faster muscle. Now, of course, bodybuilders aren't the fastest guys running 40s, but they also are freaks, right? What am I coaching again? Average dudes. Yeah, and so we just put muscle on the kids, and we're going to get them stronger that way. We run year round, so they're never out of shape. We never have to do any crazy conditioning stuff because we run year round. We don't run a lot, but if you run 3 days a week all throughout the off season, you're already ready for football practice once it rolls around. So, and because of that, you ready for that? We don't have to do 2-a-days anymore.
That's like a rite of passage, though. You're like you're harming their future by not killing them.
You know what the rite of passage is? The rite of passage is showing up 3 days a week for the last, every week for the 4 years. That's your rite of passage. You earn your stripes there. So, but now when our kids go into the season, they're not all beat to shit. They're in good condition. They're not banged up. We're good to go. So, again, the power of consistency.
Well, it's crazy how you can start with kind of basic principles like the ones you took from Lou and your interpretations, and logically get to something that is on the surface anyways, at least so different, because these are the variables everybody obsesses over. It's like, what's the actual percentage? Is it max effort or not?
Yeah.
Are you rotating exercise or not? Those are the ones that people think are really all important. And it's like enough different things work where it's a level or two below that. And I kind of love the approach of worrying first about having good days, because periodization or programming in general was always a mystery to me for that reason. Any program I ever tried, I would get fucked 2 or 3 weeks in because I would have an inexplicably hard session where I couldn't do the prescribed work. And it's like, well, now what do you do? And then it's like, well, what's the important thing? Is it a certain bar speed I'm looking for, a certain number I'm looking for, a certain exercise I'm looking for? And I almost envy bodybuilders because you're right, the cost is so low. Bodybuilders can just go hard. It's like you don't have to worry if you're having the best workout of your life. It's a stimulus you're looking for. So I like the idea because I'm a big barbell minimalist guy mostly, but they're good because you get so much bang for the buck. But that also means that you're probably not going to be best suited running roughshod through your barbell workout year round, and instead putting those eggs in some other baskets.
Listen, I used to be 1,000% barbell dude too. And then, you know what? My eyes opened because I started working with real people. And I realized they're not, they don't. And the other thing you have to understand too, my kids like to train, but they don't care that much. They're not going home and going through Instagram the whole time and, hey, did you, ask me, what about Louis Simmons? He said this and this, it's like they don't, they may look a little bit. So you also have to understand, I have to make sure the training fits who I'm, my audience. The kids like to train, but they're not going to be obsessive about it. Is that, what I'm saying? So it's a little different thing than writing to someone who's obsessive about it.
Well, I have to credit your success to that reason. You tapped on a huge amount of overlap between all different types of lifters. And those are people that are probably frustrated by complexity, probably don't want to spend hours in the gym. I mean, truth be told, I've had my best competitive runs when I cycle volume up really high. I can't do it for very long, but when I do it, I get bigger and stronger very quick. And I always go back to it's cyclical. You have to, know what each phases bring about and how to do it best. But I appreciate it. I'm like, look, if you want to be the best you possibly can over the next prep or whatever, you want to increase your tolerance to this, this, and this, and you'll grow. It's like, boring but big is that. It's like how many people have ever done fucking 5 sets of 10 on a squat before they ran that program? Almost none. So it works short term, but it's like, is that what you're going to do the rest of your life, day in, day out? Is that going to be your weekly thing? Probably not. So the ability to consistently grow in a predictable way without feeling obligated to do any on the other end, if you're a high intensity guy, because you think that's going to get you bigger, it's like, I got to vomit from curls to be able to make this growth stimulus work. It's not tenable. So it is refreshing. And I think it's great that 15 years later, this is still a tent pole in the fitness space against all of the slop that we get through Instagram. I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I'm not entirely sure that lifters are better off in the age of Instagram and YouTube compared to like 20 years ago.
There's, so I always think when I was coming up, there was so little information. Like maybe there's like Arnold's Encyclopedia, right? And then maybe you had like the muscle magazines. And then maybe you had, I don't know, I think that's just about it. And, the good thing and bad thing is you had to learn stuff on your own. You had to go in there and fart around a little bit and see what worked and what didn't work, and maybe this felt bad. But now there's way too much information, obviously, and you don't have to spend any time doing anything. And the other thing is, and I say I'm one of the biggest perpetrators of this, I think you got to learn how to train by yourself a little, not by yourself like it, but I'm saying you have to go in and experiment. And like, people don't know how to do assistance work. And to me, that baffles me, because when you don't have, like, they don't know, like, when you say, listen, we're gonna do some dumbbell bench, what does that mean? Well, you just grab a pair of 35s, then you grab 55s, then you grab the 7, whatever. And then you just keep on working up. And then what do you work up to? I don't know. We'll see what happens. Or do you know what I'm saying? Or like, do I have to use the same weight all the time? Like, yeah, you could if you want. I don't know. It doesn't matter. How about we just do dumbbell bench and we'll see what happens? And people freak out. And I got an email one time or a message, I don't know what it was, and it's like, I'm going to use the double progression for 2 weeks, and I'm going to use the single progression on assistance work. I'm like, dude, how did I squat 1 grand? I never had any of this shit. Like, you talk about talented. You know?
Yeah, and it's easy to sit there on a piece of notebook paper and draw out what seems like the most brilliant thing, and you get so far away from what's actually tethered to reality. Short story, and I tell this all the time. My wife's probably sick of me telling it, but on the note of people don't know how to do assistance work, when I ran my gym, it was all lifters, but we had a lot of competitive strongmen, and I was prepping my wife for Worlds, and we had a pro strong woman there, and they would train together. And during this run of training, we're far enough away from contests where it was a lot of bodybuilding shit in addition to the barbell stuff. And watching these girls, their first competition, they'll break themselves under a deadlift. They'll fold themselves in half. Their face popping out, veins, they'll die before they let go of that bar. I had them do leg presses, and I came across the corner because I'm like, it's awfully quiet over here. And I caught them with 25-pound plates on the leg press. And and that was another moment because you take for granted, like you said, when back in the day I started lifting Arnold. I was lucky when I got Arnold's Encyclopedia. It was one of the first books I bought, but it was all like fitness magazines. There was nothing for information out, but what was there, it was gym shit. It was machines and dumbbells and body weight stuff. It was everything in the vein of a typical bodybuilding program. And when you transition to barbell stuff, you're probably a little bit better prepared. But it's funny how like CrossFit and powerlifting became a lot more popular. Everybody started on the barbell. And to try to get them, it's like, okay, now do dumbbells. They're like, well, how do these work? It's funny, but it's like, yeah. I don't understand, what to do with my hands. I can't coordinate these things. And it's funny to watch in real time because you take for granted the kind of the order of one feeding into the other, where I guess it does make sense that would be very, very confusing for people.
Yeah. What gave me hope is we have a young man on the football team who had never played a sport in his life, not physically gifted in any way, shape, or form. And when he first started, he had trouble pressing an empty barbell overhead for 45 pounds. Now, he could do it, but like 5 reps was, I look over. Now, remember, when we do assistance work, I said, listen, just work up and do something awesome. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you do 50 reps or I don't care. Just challenge yourself. Have some fun. You and your buddies, see what happens. And I just like watching the kids. Remember, no background in training whatsoever. He pressed, this is 8 weeks. He did 100 for, I think, 2 sets of 5. Or 1 set of 6, 1 set of 5. And I go over him and like, dude, that's amazing, man. He's like, yeah. I'm like, how did you do it? He's like, well, I just put on some weight and then I do it. And then the next week, sometimes I can put on more weight. Sometimes I can't. And I was like, you know what? Remember, no background. He's like, I'm like, you already figured it out. He's like, yes, some weeks I couldn't do much. Other weeks I could do more. I just did what I could. And just
He's a genius. That's Goodwill Hunting shit right there.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. Can you explain this to anyone on the internet? Because they don't know. And it was just a result of just kind of being consistent. And sometimes you have good days and sometimes you have bad days. But I was so fucking happy that he got it, and I don't know. So, but it's like, even with when people say like, I'm gonna do 3 sets of 10, like if you can do more than 10, you should, you can do 12, you can do 15, I'm talking about assistance work. Like, you can do more. It's okay. You can do sets of 50, oh, I only got 8. Well, that doesn't count. That doesn't count.
And that goes to show the big problem with the consumer base you're talking to. And again, this is why coaching is so hugely about that communication, because you have to have some restraint on, but it's like defining, it can morph. It can be a lot of different things as long as you check a minimum number of boxes. But explaining that to people, it's like they get so fixated, especially if their earliest introduction, like, don't get me started on fucking evidence-based training. They like these hard boundaries, these upper and lower limits, or these recommendations with the science stamp of approval. And it does kind of rob them of the ability to intuit what a acceptable workout is. You lose that. It's almost like a type of proprioception for how a workout should feel on your body and knowing when you've kind of done enough.
Yes.
Because it's very intuitive. You can't put it in Prilipin's goddamn chart. You can't do it in, upper and lower limits for volume. It's something you have to learn, and you can't get it otherwise.
One of the things that always kind of opened my eyes was, I remember someone said, well, 15 reps doesn't build strength. Okay, let's just say that, whatever. And I said, so you're telling me if I squatted 600 for 15, you'd think I was weak? He said, well, no. Well, I'm like, well, so the only variable is the weight. So if you do one, just because you're not doing 600 for 15, that doesn't mean you're not getting a little stronger. And listen, I'm not saying if you want to power lift, you should do sets of 15, but this idea, like, listen, it has to be between these numbers and these numbers. Once I got over all that stuff and just said, listen, we're just going to lift hard, and obviously you want to lift within some means so you're not dead or anything like that. But one of the things I think young lifters need to do, and we do with assistance work, is you got to learn how to push a set to failure. Now, young kids, their failure is much different than my failure, because my failure is once I'm done, man, I got to catch my breath for 30 minutes, and my world is spinning. They can do a set to failure, and 2 minutes later, like, yeah, I guess I'd do another one to failure. But I like for them to understand what it's like to push, to burn a little bit, to get uncomfortable, because there's no real consequence with them when doing assistance work, other than if they get hurt, like drop a dumbbell, which is a whole other ball game. But I think it's important for young lifters to test the boundaries of what they can do safely, So that's, we always say, like, everyone needs to see Jesus one time during the assistance work. That's what I always tell them.
It's one of the reasons I like promoting those. I call them bucket list programs, because I've been vicious about kind of picking apart programs in the past that I think are dumb, and saying, like, hey, save yourself some time. Don't do this thing everybody else on Reddit's doing. But at the same time, I'll take something that I probably wouldn't recommend or probably wouldn't explain as like a really solid program that you can just run forever. Like super squats is a good example. But it's like, nah, I want to see somebody go through that before they're in their mid-20s. Like, I want somebody to know what a 3-minute set of breathing squats feels like. There's value in that doesn't boil down to how specific is this to my end goal, or how does this fit into my mesocycle.
Right. I always say,
and StrongerMan.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and StrongerMan connected a lot of that for me, because if I didn't branch out into that, I wouldn't have experienced things like density sets for compound lifts, because we typically train more for we have a minute or a minute and a half to get the most amount of reps. And so it's not even just a high rep set, it's a high rep set, take a knee, I got 30 seconds left, go again, and the amount of load you handle relative to the amount of fatigue you build up, you can't get that split in typical gym sets, and it was game changing for a lot of things.
We do our top set sometimes for singles and doubles for 8 minutes, meaning, if there's 3 of us, and listen, and what ends up happening is the bar speed is always solid, and I always tell the kids we can't do over X amount of reps per set. You can never fail. So if you're doing sets of 3 and it's getting grindy, I want sets of 1 until you start feeling good again. And sometimes, the kids, let's just say he's benching 205. I'm like, dude, you just got 25 reps at 205 in 5 minutes. When on earth could you do that, other times? But what I found out is we can't do that very often, because this is weird, our best gains on the bench press were high rep bodybuilding stuff, believe it or not. And I don't know if it's the muscular, just building muscle, but we seem to, our in season, because our in season is, most of our kids play both ways. So you talk about managing fatigue. No one's obviously taking steroids, and the kids got to get up and go to class and all that other shit. I manage fatigue by always, especially during the in season, I always they always look like they're having good days, and a lot of time that means a lot of light sets on the bench, because the first thing that takes a dump on you when you're fatigued is your bench press. That's the first thing that usually goes down, and I never want our kids to feel like they're weaker. So if I walk around, you can hear in people's voices that you can hear how loud it is in the weight room if they're feeling crappy. I'm telling you, it's like I'm like, listen, we're just going to do our first set today, and everyone's getting like 50 reps or whatever. I'm just making that up, but everyone's getting a huge pump, and they can always do sets at 10 with that weight, with obviously. And then our benches went up during the season, and we did a lot of that work, and there's something to that. Again, talk about building muscle. I think a lot of people don't prioritize that. And all you have to do is let's look at the top strongmen in the world. Do any of them not have a ton of muscle on them? They all do.
Yeah,
right?
no, they're all. If you peeled the fat off, many of them would. You got guys that are rolling with 300 pounds of lean mass. Yeah,
it is insane. And so I still think for the average dude, I would have never said this until I started working with younger kids. They got to put some muscle on them. Like Dave Tate always says, you can't flex bone.
What? Everybody has this idea that they're going to, it's again, unrealistic standards. And part of that's on the feet of the consumer being an idiot, looking at, I don't just want to be the strongest man in the world. I want to be the strongest man pound for pound. So they start looking at like John Hack, like bro, you don't have that. That's beyond muscle. You can grow muscle. You can't change where your tendons insert. You can't. That's coming next. I'm waiting for that in the next 10 years. You can't change your brain. You can't change how your nervous system operates. Like, you're talking about technology that is just not available to you. Yeah. And the easiest thing you can fucking do is add muscle. That will get you the right answer. But it's like, come on, there's only so much you can do. You're not going to compete in a different height class. You are what you are. But it's so sad, and people avoid it. They push back so much. And the bodybuilding thing, I was so happy right now to hear you say that, because that's my biggest recommendation. It's like, all lifts are not created equal. Don't try to assign the same protocols to them and expect similar results. A lot of muscles that don't grow from benching are required to bench. That's not really true with squatting and deadlifting, and they don't blow your ass out. So it's weird to me how that's kind of not in vogue right now, to just get a bigger, stockier upper body. Everybody wants to do their 5-day per week bench progression.
Well, what I like to say is, quit trying to peak your 225-pound bench. How about it's
the peak. Yeah, they're not broadening out their base. Yeah. They have no base, and that's funny.
That's exactly liken it to quit trying to carve Jello. Wait till you're marble.
That's funny, man. That is funny. Well, I really appreciate this time with you, man. It was a pleasure to talk to you and to get caught up and get your insights on all this stuff.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate you, Alex.
Oh, anytime, man. Go ahead and let people know where they can find you.
Okay, jimwendler.com. We post a couple blogs and stuff, that stuff. I'm somewhat more active on Instagram. I'm not great on that either. But we do a live stream on Fridays on YouTube, and then we post the YouTube shorts. I have a guy that does all that, does a great job. I answer any question that comes up during the live chat. It's usually an hour at 10 a.m. Eastern time. It's one of the best things I've ever done. I love doing that because you get real questions, so to speak, and you can really, how do I put this? You can really answer them and give them, it shows like the passion I have, I guess. And, real quick, the one thing I get all the time, and we talked about average dudes, is people get upset that they're not 6'5" or 300. Like, you know what? Be happy with who you are and just make all the fucking great changes you can to your consistency and effort. And just be the best effing version of yourself you can be. Stop trying to be John Hack. That guy's like an absolute freak. And that's fine. You're not him. Just be you and be a better version of you. And that's the best advice I can give people. I wish I would have kicked my own ass a few times doing that, instead of trying to be Walter Payton. I'm not Walter Payton. I'm Jim Wendler. I should have been the best version of myself I could have been, and accepted that.
I agree. That's the message that needs to be passed around more. Well, thanks again, Jim, for joining us today. You guys can go ahead and check out Jim's Instagram, jimwendler.com. If you haven't, pick up a copy of 531 and the supplementary books that came after that. Until next time, guys, this is Bromley. I'll see you.